everybody. Welcome into Folklore and Flourish. You're here with Jane over at Blue Box 29. Today is June 8th. Welcome back to a brand new week in June. We are in another hero month, but this month is all about the heroes and their quests. The archetype for this month is the Pathfinder. So welcome into June 8th. Today is all about the trial. So today with the trial, it is a new week and we are hitting all of the ordeals, all of the difficulties. So we start right away with the trial as an overall theme. We are going to see 4 individuals step into their initial trials or step into one of their most significant trials today. You're going to see that through Greek, Hindu, Celtic, and Inuit folklore today. But the theme for today is pain and proof. Not necessarily the old idea that you have to suffer to prove that you're worthy of whatever, or that you have to choose the hardest path to get through something. That's kind of, I'm hoping that more and more people are moving away from that. I'm definitely tired of making myself struggle more because it somehow makes me feel like I'm worthy of more if I struggle more. I don't think that that's the case anymore. And unfortunately, I don't think that was ever the case. I don't think that you have to suffer at all to prove that you are worthy of anything. I don't think that there's any correlation there. But the lesson today specifically is the strength arriving through our suffering. So the strength arriving through the suffering. So we're moving away from the idea of the obsession over the suffering and really focusing on the strength of it. What did we gain from this? Everything happens for a reason, and man, have I been living in that lately. And today we're going to see that. We're going to see the strength and what we do with it moving forward. So with that, you're going to see those 4 stories today, and you're going to think about what proves me. What proves me, because it shouldn't just be our suffering, our traumas, whatever it shouldn't just be the bad or the negative or the sad things that define us. But with that in mind, we're going to hold a piece of ice briefly in our hand, noticing our breath and the sensation without resistance. So we're going to notice our breath and sensation when holding ice today. I'm not saying do it in a way that's like hurtful or whatever. It's piece ice. You put it in your hand, acknowledge it. Notice your breathing and the sensation, all the sensations other than, oh, it's cold. Okay, obviously. Okay, and then my final thought for you today is to let discomfort clarify what within you is capable of enduring and continuing forward. So let that discomfort clarify those things within you that are capable of enduring and continuing forward. And with that, enjoy today. Enjoy June 8th with the trial, our first day of week 2. Knock it off, Molly. Roxy did nothing to you. Molly. Enjoy your day of trials, pain, and proof. Roxy just went through a trial. I apologize. This is not professional in any way, shape, or form. We will do better for you tomorrow on June 9th. See you guys. Before we begin, I want to take a moment to honor the cultures behind the stories we are about to explore. The tales shared here come from many peoples, lands, and traditions. I do not change these stories to fit modern expectations or to align with today's social standards. Instead, I present them as they were told, sometimes beautiful, sometimes harsh, sometimes challenging. We are not here to judge the past, but to understand it, to listen, to learn, and to honor the ancestors who carried these stories forward. We also share stories from various religious traditions. These are presented in their historical and spiritual context, with respect for their beliefs that they represent. Every culture deserves respect, context, and acknowledgement, and this space is dedicated to doing exactly that. Story 1, Heracles and the Nemean Lion. The hills of Nemea lay beneath a blazing summer sun, their rocky slopes covered with the scrub oak wild grasses, and thorn-covered bush that rustled beneath the wind. Shepherds no longer brought their flocks into these valleys, and travelers avoided the roads that wound between the hills. Fear had settled over the region like a shadow. Villages barred their gates before sunset, and stories whispered around evening fires spoke of a monstrous lion whose strength surpassed that of any ordinary beast. Its hide could not be pierced by spear or arrow, and every attempt to destroy it had ended in failure. The creature had become more than a danger. It had become a symbol of helplessness. When Heracles arrived in Nemea, he found a land exhausted by fear. The great hero had already begun the long road of atonement imposed upon him by fate and the gods. Once celebrated for his strength, he now carried the weight of sorrow, guilt, and hardship. The trials set before him were not designed simply to test his power. They were meant to transform him. Each labor would demand something greater than muscle and courage. Each challenge would force him to confront suffering, endurance, and the limits of what he believed possible. As he traveled through the countryside gathering information, Heracles listened to frightened villagers describing the lion's attacks. Hunters spoke of arrows bouncing harmlessly from its golden hide. Warriors recounted broken spears and shattered shields, following the beast's trail through forests and ravines. Heracles eventually reached the hills where the lion made its lair. There, among steep cliffs and tangled brush, he found tracks pressed deeply into the earth and the remains of previous victims scattered among the stones. The evidence revealed a terrifying truth. This was not an enemy that could be overcome through ordinary means. The hunt carried him deeper into the wilderness. Days passed beneath relentless heat, and he tracked the beast through rocky valleys and narrow passes. At last, he discovered the lion's cave hidden among the hills. The entrance yawned like the mouth of the earth itself, dark and silent. Knowing that weapons could be useless, Heracles prepared for a different kind of battle. He blocked one entrance to the cave with massive stones and entered through the other, carrying only his determination and the strength he had spent a lifetime cultivating. Inside the darkness, hero and beast finally met. The struggle that followed would become one of the most famous encounters in Greek mythology. But the true trial had begun long before the first blow was struck. Heracles had already endured uncertainty, fear, exhaustion, and doubt. The lion represented every obstacle that seemed impossible to overcome. By stepping willingly into the cave, he proved that strength is not measured only by victory. It is measured by the willingness to face suffering directly rather than retreat from it. When he eventually emerged from the darkness, the labor would be complete, but the deeper transformation had already begun. The trial had revealed that greatness is forged not through comfort, but through the challenges that demand everything we have to give. Story 2. Bhima and the Forest Trial. The forests of ancient India stretched for miles beneath towering trees whose branches formed vast green canopies above the earth. Rivers wound through the wilderness like ribbons of silver, nourishing flowering plants, sacred groves, and the countless forms of life. Yet the forest was more than a place of beauty. It was also a place of testing. Many heroes of India's great epics entered the wilderness only to discover that hardship often teaches lessons no palace or battlefield can provide. Among those heroes was Bhima, one of the mighty Pandava brothers, whose strength became legendary throughout the land. After losing their kingdom through deception and betrayal, the Pandavas were forced into exile. The comforts of royal life disappeared almost overnight. Gone were the halls of their ancestors, the security of their homeland, and the certainty of their future. Instead, they found themselves traveling through forests in remote regions, surviving through endurance and determination. For Bhima, whose strength often seemed limitless, the exile presented a different kind of challenge. Physical power could defeat enemies, but it could not erase suffering or restore what had been lost. As the brothers journeyed through the wilderness, they encountered countless hardships. Days of travel beneath intense heat were followed by nights spent beneath unfamiliar skies. Food was not always plentiful. Dangerous animals roamed the forests, and hostile forces watched for opportunities to exploit their weakness. Yet Bhima continued forward, carrying burdens both literal and emotional. He often used his immense strength to protect his family, clearing paths, gathering supplies, and defending those he loved. Nevertheless, even the strongest warrior could not shield himself completely from disappointment, frustration, and grief. One particular journey carried the Pandavas into a dense forest where towering trees blocked much of the sunlight. The air felt heavy with moisture, and every step through the undergrowth demanded effort. Progress was slow. paths disappeared beneath tangled roots and thick vegetation. The wilderness seemed determined to resist them. As exhaustion mounted, Bhima began to understand that some trials are not conquered through force. The forest could not be wrestled into submission. It could only be endured. Every step forward required patience as well as strength. By the time the brothers emerged from the forest, Bhima had gained something more valuable than another victory. The hardship had revealed aspects of himself that years of comfort had concealed. Strength alone had not carried him through the trial. Loyalty, perseverance, humility, and devotion to those traveling beside him had proven equally important. The exile would continue. The greater challenges still waited ahead, but the forest had taught him a lesson shared by many heroes throughout the world's traditions. True power is not proven when life is easy. It is proven when a person continues moving forward despite suffering, uncertainty, and loss. The trial itself becomes a forge, and those who endure it emerge stronger than before. Story 3. Cú Chulainn's Ordeal at the Ford. The wind swept across the plains of Ulster, bending the grass beneath the sky filled with racing clouds. Rivers wound through the countryside like silver threads, and ancient standing stones watched silently over the land. In those days, warriors earned their name through courage, skill, and sacrifice, and among them, none was more renowned than Cú Chulainn's, the youthful champion whose deeds would become woven into the heart of Irish legend. Though still young, he carried responsibilities that would have burdened men twice his age. The safety of his people often rested upon his shoulders, and fate seemed determined to test the limits of his endurance. While Queen Maeve's armies marched against Ulster during the Great Conflict, remembered, in the Taibo Cú Chulainn, a strange curse weakened the warriors of the province, leaving them unable to fight. Only Cú Chulainn remained capable of defending the land. Alone, he rode out to meet an invading force that vastly outnumbered him. The challenge before him was impossible by any ordinary measure. Yet the young hero understood that some duties cannot be abandoned simply because they are difficult. The borderlands of Ulster were marked by rivers and fords, places where travelers crossed from one territory into another. It was at these crossings that Cú Chulainn made his stand. Day after day, warrior after warrior approached him, seeking passage for Maeve's advancing army. The custom of single combat governed these encounters. One challenger would step forward, and the young champion would meet them alone while thousands watched from a distance. The battles were fierce and exhausting. Each victory demanded another sacrifice of strength, and each sunrise brought a new opponent to the ford. As the days passed, fatigue settled deep within his body. Wounds accumulated, sleep became scarce. The endless cycle of combat threatened to break even a hero of legendary ability. Yet something remarkable happened during those trials. The struggle revealed depths of resilience that neither Cú Chulainn nor his enemies had fully understood. Every challenge stripped away comfort, certainty, and pride, leaving only determination. The ford became more than a battlefield. It became a proving ground where character was tested alongside strength. The ordeal reached its most difficult moments when opponents appeared who were not merely enemies but figures connected to his own past, people he respected or cared about. In those encounters, the pain of the trial extended beyond physical suffering into matters of loyalty, duty, and sacrifice. The greatest challenges often demand more than courage. They require us to choose between competing obligations and to carry the consequences of those choices afterward. Though the battles eventually passed into legend, the deeper lesson endured. Cú Chulainn's greatness was not born from victory alone. It emerged through endurance. The ford revealed that true strength is not the absence of suffering, but the ability to continue despite it. Long after the wounds healed and the battles ended, people remembered the young warrior who stood alone against overwhelming odds, because his ordeal demonstrated a truth recognized by many traditions. Hardship does not merely test who we are, it reveals who we are becoming. Story 4. Kiviuq and the Endless Journey. Far north, where sea ice stretches across the horizon and winter stars shimmer above frozen waters, Inuit storytellers have long shared tales of Kiviuq, a traveler whose journeys carried him farther than most could imagine. His adventures unfolded across a world shaped by snow, wind, ocean, and survival. In the Arctic, every voyage demanded courage. A sudden storm could transform calm waters into chaos, while shifting ice and bitter cold tested even the most experienced travelers. Within this landscape, Kiviuq became known not because his path was easy, but because he endured trials that seemed never-ending. One season, Kiviuq set out across the sea in a small boat, intending to travel between distant communities. The waters were calm when he departed, and the sky glowed with the pale light of the northern summer. Yet anyone familiar with the Arctic understood how quickly conditions could change. Far from shore, dark clouds gathered along the horizon. Winds strengthened. Waves rose higher with every passing hour until the sea itself seemed determined to oppose him. The storm struck with tremendous force. Water crashed over the sides of the boat while freezing winds tore across the open ocean. Visibility vanished beneath the sheets of rain and spray. Kiviuq fought to keep his craft afloat, guiding it through waves that towered above him like moving cliffs. The struggle continued for what felt like eternity. When the storm finally passed, he found himself far from any familiar landmark. The coastlines he knew had disappeared. The world around him seemed transformed into something strange and uncertain. Many stories of Kiviuq followed a similar pattern. One hardship leads to another. Danger survives only to reveal a greater challenge waiting beyond it. He encounters unfamiliar lands, powerful beings, and situations that test every skill he possesses. Yet what makes Kiviuq remarkable is not that he avoids suffering, it is that he refuses to surrender to it. Again and again, he adapts, learns, and continues. The journey itself becomes a lesson in endurance. Every obstacle teaches something necessary for surviving the next. As years passed, Kiviuq came to understand that trials are rarely isolated events. They arrive in succession, shaping a person gradually through experience. The Arctic offered no guarantees of comfort or certainty. Survival depended upon resilience, wisdom, and the ability to calm when circumstances grew difficult. These qualities could not be acquired instantly. They were forged through repeated encounters with hardship. When storytellers spoke of Kiviuq beside lamps glowing warmly against the Arctic night, listeners recognized something familiar in his adventures. Everyone faces storms, whether upon the sea or within their own lives. The value of a trial is not measured by the pain it causes, but by the strength it cultivates. Kiviuq's long journey reminds us that endurance is not a single act of courage. It is a choice made again and again, each time we decide to continue moving forward despite uncertainty. In that persistence lies a quiet form of heroism that survives long after the storm has passed. Daily Thread for June 8th, the trial. No traveler reaches the far horizon unchanged. Sooner or later, the road demands proof. Heracles found it in the darkness of the lion's cave, where strength alone could not guarantee victory, and fear had to be faced directly. Bhima discovered it in exile when the loss of comfort revealed qualities deeper than physical power. Cú Chulainn met it at the fort, standing day after day against overwhelming odds, until endurance became as important as courage. Kiviuq encountered it across storm-tossed seas and frozen horizons, where survival depended not upon avoiding hardship, but upon learning how to continue through it. Though their paths crossed different lands and cultures, each hero learned the same lesson. Trials are not interruptions of the journey. They are part of the journey itself. The moments that challenge us most often become the moments that shape us most deeply. Pain strips away illusion. Difficulty reveals hidden strengths. What feels like resistance may actually be transformation taking place beneath the surface. Forging patience where there was impatience. Wisdom where there was certainty. And resilience where there was once only hope. The road ahead may become easier, but the traveler who emerges from the trial is no longer the same person who first stepped into it. Every scar becomes a story, every hardship a teacher, and every challenge a reminder that strength is not something we are given. It is something we discover within ourselves when the path grows steep and we choose, despite everything, to keep walking forward.